In the days of ancient Israel, during a time of great spiritual need and national turmoil, the story of a humble man named Elisha unfolds, a story filled with divine miracles, unwavering faith, and profound lessons about God's power and mercy. This is a story that encourages us all to trust in God's sovereignty, to serve Him with humility, and to believe that nothing is impossible with God. Elisha was born into a modest family in the small town of Abel-Meholah. His name means God is salvation, a prophetic hint of the divine purpose that would shape his life. From a young age, Elisha was a simple man, helping his father in the fields, plowing the land with oxen, living a quiet and humble life. Yet, even in his humble beginnings, God's plan was already at work to elevate him to a role of great significance. One day, as Elisha was working in the fields, a notable figure appeared, a prophet named Elijah, a fierce servant of God known for his mighty deeds and miracles. Elijah approached Elisha, passing by and casting his cloak over him as a symbolic gesture of calling him into divine service. Elisha understood immediately that God was calling him to be a prophet, to serve him and carry his message to the people of Israel. Without hesitation, Elisha left his family, his livelihood, and his quiet life behind. He burned his plowing equipment and followed Elijah wherever he went, becoming his faithful disciple. This moment marked the beginning of a transformative journey, a journey of faith, miracles, and divine power. Elisha's dedication and unwavering commitment to Elijah prepared him for the great works he would later perform. As Elijah's time on earth drew near its end, he knew he must pass the prophetic mantle to Elisha. The two journeyed together to the Jordan River. Elijah struck the waters with his cloak, causing the river to part so they could cross on dry ground, a miracle that affirmed Elijah's divine authority. Before Elijah was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire, Elisha asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit, a request that signified his desire for greater prophetic power and divine anointing. Elijah agreed, but only if Elisha witnessed his departure. Suddenly, a chariot of fire appeared, and a whirlwind carried Elijah into heaven. As Elijah ascended, his cloak fell to the ground, and Elisha picked it up, now clothed with divine authority. He struck the waters of the Jordan with Elijah's cloak, and once again, the waters parted. The prophets watching from afar recognized that the spirit of Elijah now rested upon Elisha. From that moment, Elisha carried the mantle of prophecy, performing miracles and leading the people with divine guidance. Elisha's first public act as a prophet was in the city of Jericho. The city's water supply was tainted and causing sickness among its inhabitants. Elisha requested a bowl of salt, threw it into the spring, and declared that God had healed the water. Immediately, the water was purified, and the land became fruitful once more. This miracle demonstrated Elisha's role as a conduit of God's power, bringing life, health, and renewal. As Elisha traveled from city to city, his miracles continued to astonish and inspire. One day, in the city of Bethel, a group of boys mocked him, calling him bald head. Recognizing the disrespect shown to God's prophet, Elisha cursed them, and 2 bears emerged from the forest, mauling 42 of the boys. This event, though frightening, served as a reminder of the reverence and respect due to God's messengers, a warning against mocking God's servants. Another powerful story took place when a widow approached Elisha in deep distress. Her husband had died, leaving her in debt, and creditors threatened to take her sons into slavery as payment. Elisha asked her what she possessed. She replied that she had only a small jar of oil. Elisha instructed her to borrow empty vessels from her neighbors, then pour the oil into all of them. Miraculously, the oil kept flowing until every vessel was filled. With the filled vessels, she sold the oil, paid her debts, and saved her sons, an extraordinary demonstration of God's provision in times of desperation. In Shunem, a wealthy woman showed great hospitality to Elisha whenever he passed through. Recognizing her kindness, Elisha prophesied that she would bear a son within a year. True to the prophecy, she gave birth to a boy. Years later, tragedy struck when the boy fell ill and died suddenly. The devastated woman sought Elisha, trusting that God could still perform a miracle. Elisha returned with her, prayed over the boy, and laid himself upon him. Miraculously, the boy's life was restored. This act of compassion and faith showed that God's mercy and power are accessible to those who trust Him. During a severe famine in Israel, Elisha was with a group of prophets. They decided to prepare a stew but unknowingly added poisonous wild goods. As the men ate, they realized the stew was deadly. Elisha calmly threw some flour into the pot, neutralizing the poison, and the stew became safe to eat. This miracle demonstrated that even in the smallest acts, God's power can turn death into life and provide sustenance. The famine persisted, and a man brought Elisha 20 loaves of barley bread. Although the provision seemed insufficient to feed many, Elisha declared that God had spoken, and miraculously, the bread multiplied to feed 100 men with leftovers. This miracle of divine provision foreshadowed the abundant sustenance God would provide to His people, even in times of scarcity. Another remarkable story involved Naaman, a Syrian army commander suffering from leprosy. Hearing of Elisha's miracles, Naaman traveled to Israel seeking healing. Elisha instructed him to wash 7 times in the Jordan River. Naaman was initially offended by the simple command, expecting a grand supernatural act. But his servants persuaded him to obey. When Naaman dipped himself in the Jordan as instructed, his skin was completely healed, returning to the purity of a child's. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Naaman declared that the God of Israel was the one true God. Despite his healing, Naaman offered gifts to Elisha, but the prophet refused. However, Elisha's servant Gehazi secretly pursued Naaman, asking for gifts in Elisha's name. Naaman, unaware, gave Gehazi silver and clothes. When Gehazi returned, Elisha confronted him, revealing that his greed had caused the leprosy to cling to him and his descendants, a sobering lesson about integrity and obedience to God. Elisha's miracles also extended to everyday life. One day, while some prophets were cutting wood, an iron axe head fell into the Jordan River. The man who borrowed it was distressed because the axe was valuable. Elisha, with calm authority, threw a stick into the water, causing the iron axe head to float. This simple act showed that God cares about even the smallest details and can intervene in everyday circumstances. Furthermore, God's protection was vividly demonstrated when Aram's army sought to capture Elisha. The king of Aram plotted against Israel, and his army surrounded the city where Elisha was staying. The servant of Elisha was terrified, but Elisha prayed for him to see beyond the physical. God opened the servant's eyes, and he saw the hills filled with chariots and horses of fire, God's heavenly army ready to defend his prophet. Elisha then prayed that the enemy's army be struck with blindness. The soldiers, now disoriented, followed Elisha into the heart of Israel's camp. When their sight was restored, they realized they had been captured. Elisha refused to kill them, instead offering mercy and sending them back to their master, demonstrating God's mercy even towards enemies. Yet, the story of Elisha was not without its darker moments. The king of Aram, in his rage, besieged Samaria, causing a terrible famine. People resorted to cannibalism, and life became desperate. The king blamed Elisha, but the prophet prophesied that the famine would end within a day. That night, the Aramean army fled in terror, leaving behind their supplies and chariots. The next morning, the starving city found the enemy's camp deserted, and the famine was miraculously ended. This event showed that God's timing is perfect and that His promises, no matter how bleak the situation, will be fulfilled. Later, a Shunammite woman, who had been blessed with a son through Elisha's prophecy, faced hardship once more during a famine. Her land was taken, and she returned to plead her case before the king. Gehazi, Elisha's servant, was telling the king about the miracles he witnessed. As he recounted the resurrection of her son, the woman arrived. Moved by her story, the king restored her land and possessions, demonstrating that God's favor and blessings come at the right moment for those who trust Him. In another divine encounter, Elisha was in Damascus when King Ben-Hadad of Aram was gravely ill. The king sent his servant Hazael to ask if he would recover. Elisha looked deeply into Hazael's eyes and wept, seeing the suffering and the evil that Hazael would bring. He prophetically declared that the king would die and that Hazael would seize power. True to Elisha's words, Hazael assassinated the king and became king himself. This dark prophecy showed that God's sovereignty extends even into the affairs of kingdoms and rulers. Elisha's divine missions continued as he anointed Jehu as king of Israel, a man chosen to bring justice and wipe out the wicked reign of Ahab's family. When Jehu arrived in Jezreel, Jezebel, Ahab's wicked wife, mocked him from her window. Unfazed, Jehu commanded her servants to throw her down. They obeyed, and Jezebel's body was trampled by horses. When her body was later found, only her skull, feet, and hands remained, fulfilling Elisha's prophecy. This powerful act marked the end of her reign of cruelty and demonstrated that divine justice would ultimately prevail. As Elisha aged, his prophetic authority remained strong. Concerned about Israel's future, the young king Joash came to Elisha, worried about their enemies. Elisha, nearing the end of his life, instructed Joash to shoot an arrow out the window, symbolizing victory over Aram. Joash struck the ground 3 times, but Elisha was disappointed, saying that if he had struck more times, Israel would have completely defeated Aram. Even in his final days, Elisha's wisdom and prophetic insight continued to guide Israel's destiny. When Elisha died, his body was buried. One day, some Israelites were hastily burying a man when they saw Moabite raiders approaching. In their haste, they threw the man's body into Elisha's tomb. As soon as the dead body touched Elisha's bones, life returned to him, and he stood on his feet alive. This final miracle proved that God's power was not limited by death and that Elisha's legacy of divine power endured beyond his earthly life. Throughout his life, Elisha demonstrated that faith, obedience, humility, and compassion are keys to experiencing God's miracles. His story teaches us that God cares about every detail of our lives and that his power is limitless. Whether it was purifying poisoned waters, multiplying bread, healing the sick, or protecting his people from enemies, Elisha's life was a testament to God's sovereignty and mercy. His life reminds us that with God, nothing is impossible. When we serve him with a humble heart and unwavering faith, he will work miracles in our lives, big and small. Elisha's story encourages us to trust in God's divine purpose and to remember that his love and power are active today, just as they were in ancient Israel. Let us be inspired by Elisha's faith and courage, knowing that God is always with us, ready to perform miracles and bring hope in every circumstance. As you reflect on this remarkable story, may your faith be strengthened, and may you trust in the divine power that works through those who believe. Thank you for joining us in exploring the extraordinary life of Elisha. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share with your family and friends. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring biblical stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, let us continue to grow in faith and understanding, trusting in the God of miracles who is still active today.